Good morning. Good to see everybody here this morning. Glad to have our visitors. Got some of our family here. Glad to have them with us as well. Glad to have some of ours that have been traveling back, and ask you to continue to pray for all of those that are in your bulletin and those that have need. We'd invite you now to take your Bibles, please, and turn to Psalm 13. Psalm 13. If you come to my house and my man cave area, my coke room, is not in too big a mess that Debbie won't let me show it to you. You'll see that I have, I don't even know, I have a lot of bottles. I have a bottle, but I do have older bottles that belong to other brands as well. There's one that I don't have, and I would like to have. So if you see this one, you snatch it up for me. That is a Ben Fizz soda bottle. Ben Fizz, predated some of it. I guess I've waited a while. Ben Fizz interests me for this reason. And I've seen this video. I really meant to take time this week, since I was going to talk about this, to go look at it again, because I haven't seen it in years. But Ben Fizz sponsored the first ever transcontinental flight in the United States. So that was a flight that left from New York, and flew across the country to Long Beach, California. And I wrote it down somewhere so I wouldn't forget the dates. It was September 17th, 1911, that the pilot, a man named Cal P. Rogers, left New York City and started toward Long Beach. So September 17th, 1911. He arrived in California on December 10th, 1911. Now, if you're counting, that is 84 days. So he went from New York to Long Beach by airplane in 84 days. Now, if you're doing math in your head, you're thinking, that's not terribly impressive. You know, the old wagon trains might have beat that, you know. But here's the thing. He was only in the air for 3 days, 10 hours, and 14 minutes. All the rest of the time, he was on the ground as a result of either bad weather, light crashes, major crashes, and repairs. It is said, and this is, again, I'm not making this up, it is said that when that plane that left New York City arrived in Long Beach, it only had 2 original parts left on it. It had a rear rudder that had started with it, and it had an oil pan that had started with it. Now, I don't know about you, but I think I would have stopped trying the first time I lost the wings. But he had a goal. He had a destination. And so he kept at it through those light crashes and those major crashes and all of those repairs. And eventually, he got there. Now, when I told you we would be studying in the Psalms this year, I told you that there are so many spiritual lessons that are in the songs, and that, of course, is one of the reasons they're so beloved by so many through the centuries. But at the core of that is the emotions that they speak to and that we identify with, you know. And we're going to look at Psalms 13. My Bible has the superscription. Let me see exactly how it worded it. It is a prayer for help in trouble. At some point, I put my own superscription in there that just says a psalm of problems. Because what we're going to see today is it is a psalm of problem. Now, somewhere in the course of this year, I will most likely, do a lesson that gives us a little bit more of an overview, but of the book of Psalms as a whole, because there are a lot of things I want you to understand about it that I think will help you as a Bible student grow more through it. I will tell you this, most people, by a wide margin, do not understand the setup of Psalms at all. Psalms, it's so long, right? Come on, you can tell me, I know. When you get to that part in your daily Bible reading, it's like every day I'm still in Psalms. I'm still, it's a long book. And we tend to think of it, and I think maybe possibly also it's hurt by our associating it with Proverbs like we do. And we've talked about that relationship a little bit already. But Proverbs are very much, a 1 or 2 line thing, right? And we tend to treat these individual psalms the same way that we do the Proverbs. And so, here's one. Here's a song of problems. Okay, let's pull that out and deal with problems. But Psalms is very much a book that it is designed to be read from beginning to end. It is designed to be one unit. And it's not so much a psalm book as it is a prayer book. I don't know where in history that terminology got turned a little bit, because I read all the time in commentators and they'll call it, the Jewish songbook. And that's not entirely accurate. It started its life out as prayers. And then over time, especially during the captivity, they put a lot of those prayers to music. Yeah. But it's really the Jewish prayer book. And if you think about that history, you maybe can understand some of the emotions we will find in the book better. Because this is a people that thought they had arrived at their destination. They were the people of God. They were the chosen nation. And they had the temple of God there in Jerusalem and all of these things. And then the captivity happened. And the temple is destroyed, and they're carried away and removed from their land. Yeah. And these are basically, by and large, prayers that help them get through that time. And so we'll see that over and over again. But our one here in Psalm 13 I chose because of our old Ben Fizz example. Because it shows us the relationship for the Christian, for the child of God. It shows us the relationship that exists between God and his children, and the fact that in that relationship, there are problems. Does that sound strange to say? There are problems in our relationship with God, even if we're striving to be the child of God. And when we have those problems, and they come at us, directed at us in so many ways. One of the things you'll notice about this song, if you'll go ahead and look at it with me, is you will you will see that whatever the specific problem is here, you're not told. You know, a lot of times we are told in the songs, okay, this is because of this situation, etc. You're not told what the situation is here. You know? And so scholars love to speculate. And I smile at that simply because it's not there for a reason. Because this is a psalm, a prayer that was written not to help you when you have a specific problem. I don't know if you're like Debbie and myself, but one of the things that we've learned to do over the years is to utilize that enigma that is known as Google. Yeah. You know, Google has actually become a verb now, listed in the dictionary. So you Google something, you means that you're going to go to the internet to find out how to do something. So, you know, something breaks around the house and you need to fix it, and you go Google that, you know. I remember one time on one of my cars, I had a light that wouldn't work right no matter what I did. I went in and I Googled that problem on that makeup car, and it showed me for a temporary fix for a penny, literally a penny. You put a penny in a certain place in the car and it solved that problem. I put that penny in there, and when that car finally gave it the go several years after that, it still had that original penny. I never had to touch it again. Took 5 minutes, but only because I Googled it, you know. I had a specific problem, though, so there was a specific answer just for that problem. Well, God doesn't want you to fall into that trap in Psalms 13. So, in other words, if we knew what was the psalmist's specific problem, does he have an illness? Does he have an enemy that is at war with him that looks like they're about to win? Has he just lost we don't know if he just lost loved ones or what his situation is, because the autobiographical aspect of it is not important. What's important is this is how the child of God is to respond to problems in this life and the way they create problems in our relationship with God. Now, maybe when I first say that, you think, well, you know, problems in this life shouldn't create problems with God. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Problems in this life should not create problems in our relationship with God, but they are one of the major sources of problems in our relationship with God. And this song goes the length of the country from New York to Long Beach, and showing us in just a few verses how that journey goes from being in genuine grief. And that's all I want to say about that aspect of it, is be sure you understand that this is a prayer that is written by someone who is genuinely grieving. Because when we have problems and when we can't understand or don't understand why we have those problems, that creates grief in us. So I want you to think about that for a minute. Soak that in so we can see what the lesson. We can't understand or we don't understand. It creates grief in us. That's pain. That's suffering. Nobody, I would say in the right mind, enjoys those situations. I'm going to read the whole song. Prepare yourself. It's 6 verses, so, you know, buckle up. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart? all day long? How long will my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Enlighten my eyes, or I will sleep the sleep of death. And my enemy will say, I have overcome him. And my adversaries will rejoice when I am shaken. But I have trusted in your loving kindness. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. I don't know about you, but to me, that's a quick trip. We are in verse 1, and we are in pain, and we are in suffering, and we are crying out to God, and of course it's manifested in such an emotional way with that phrase, how long? You ever have troubles, problems that are so big, that are so life-consuming, that it just seems to go on and on forever? That's where he's at the beginning of his prayer. And he spends the first 2 verses in that situation. But notice with verse 3, there's a change. And with verse 3, he's moved beyond the cry for help, if you will, itself. The just pathetic plea of this is my situation or this is my circumstance. And he moves from complaint, which is really what those first 2 verses are, right? Complaints. Yeah. Hey, Lord, it's me. You know, one of the good guys, trying to be your child, trying to do your will. So we'll talk about the prayer some in a minute, but that's what he does. And then he winds up in 5 and 6. His confidence is restored. He is once again fully rejoicing. He's able to sing in the Lord. So 6 verses, he went up, boom. That's pretty good even for a jet, right? What can we learn here? Well, learn, number 1, that it is okay to question God. Did you know that? I think sometimes we don't understand that. It's okay. And what I mean by okay is I mean simply that God understands that. God understands the why and the how that were sometimes led to question him. If I don't understand something, it makes the problem so much bigger, right? So much bigger. If I don't understand it, and I can't understand it, how many times have we said, if I just could understand why? Notice I didn't listen because we couldn't begin to listen, could we? There are all kinds of problems and complications, of trials and tribulations that occur over a lifetime to the average person. And we're not going to understand why every one of those things happened. Some of y'all might remember how I used to teach Brother Scott Rathkamp when he was here, and he would talk about his list of questions for God and how he got to heaven, he's going to ask God. And I would always tell him, when you get to heaven, Scott, you're not going to ask God a thing. I promise you, you're going to be blown away, and you're not going to ask God a thing. It's not going to matter to you anymore. You're not going to. But for some people, they have to at least believe that at some point they're going to get that answer, or it drives them crazy. And when you're in struggles, when you're in grief, when you're in pain, then it really seems like you've got to have the answer, the specific answer. You've got to understand. And look how it makes it seem like this has been your whole life, and this will always be. Yeah. One of the things that as a counselor that you're trained to help people understand is that this problem is not your whole life, and it will not last forever. But when you're in the midst of those trials and in the midst of that pain, there's no end in sight, is there? You wake up in the morning, it's the first thing you start thinking about. You go to bed and fall asleep at night, it was the last thing you were thinking about. It dominates your life, and you feel like it's just gone on forever and ever and ever. How long? God understands that pain. And he's not offended just because we would be moved to the point of crying out. One of the biggest lessons you can take from Psalm 13, and I'll reiterate it at the end, but one of the biggest lessons you can take from Psalm 13 is just this. As long as your communication with God is taking place, it does not matter if that communication consists of a sigh or of a song. What matters is that that communication is taking place. The worst mistake you can make is to quit talking to God in those situations. But the first thing the devil does is try and convince you to quit talking to God when you're in those situations. The devil will tell you, oh, he's the source of your problems. The devil will tell you, oh, he doesn't care about you. Here's the proof. Yeah. The devil will tell you, oh, you don't deserve to get to talk to God. You're too sinful to talk to God. He's got a whole litany of lies. But they're all designed to keep you from communicating with God. Sometimes I've been drawn into those situations. Sometimes you may read about them in the paper, hear about them on the news, where someone has been living a double life. I read recently about a situation where a man's family knew, they were aware of the fact that he had a second, a hidden life and another family in another city and everything. And when he died at the funeral, they weren't surprised by that, and they had had some communications in the immediate aftermath of his death, you know. What they were surprised by was the third family that showed up. This was just a couple months back. And sure enough, a third family that neither of the other families ever even suspected existed, a third secret family existed as well. And you say, wow, how does someone get away with doing that for year after year after year? Well, what they do is they make sure no communication ever takes place between any of those parties in any way. So they They don't want you to know about the other party's existence. If you are aware of the other party's existence, they want to say and do things to you that make you think that the absolute last possibility in the world is that they're talking to that other party, a situation. Kind of what the kids like to refer to as the gaslighting, making them believe a false reality. That's what Satan does with us. And when we're in the middle of pain and suffering, whatever it's caused, when we're in the middle of that, and we're confused and we hurt and we don't understand, that is when he starts pouring the lies on, because he wants to break the communication with God. I challenge you to go through Psalms, read all of these Psalms, and notice all of the different specific situations you will encounter in there. And notice the one key ingredient in all of them is that the individual keeps talking to God through it. Might be mad at God, might be upset with God, but regardless, keeps talking to God, keeps that communication. So don't fall for that lie of it's going to be like this forever. And most of all, don't stop talking with God just because you're in that situation. Take it to him. And then verse 3, the consider and answer me. Here you get into a more proper prayer, right? Now it's not just his complaint. It's his desire for response from God. Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Enlighten my eyes, or I will sleep the sleep of death. Now, a lot of commentators like to speculate here on whether he's talking about the possibility of an actual physical death, or if he's just using that as a metaphor for the relationship with God becoming completely severed, because it's used frequently that way through the Psalms. I don't know. The physical death does not really seem to fit as well here. So I think it probably is more metaphoric here. But he's like, if I can't get some help, if I can't get some understanding, I just can't go on. You never felt that way. I never felt that. I don't get some help. I just can't go on. And then, verse 4, my enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my adversaries will rejoice when I am shaken. Well, now, here is a picture. And I've been there. You've probably been there. We may be there again at some point. But this is much like Moses' when he is speaking with God after the giving of the 10 Commandments and Moses going down and find all that going on and breaking them and going back up. And you might remember God will have nothing to do with them from now on. He's going to destroy them all and raise up a new nation for Moses. And Moses says, now God, if you did that, what would that do to your reputation? Because you told Pharaoh and all the Egyptians that we were your special people and you were going to bring us out and all of these things. And if you bring us out here and then you just kill everybody but me, then the world's going to point at that and your reputation is going to suffer. And so here is the one saying, look, those who have ridiculed me for being your servant, those who have made fun of me for dedicating my life to you, those who have ridiculed me for living by a different standard, a different set of ethics than what the world around me was living in, you'll make them look good. You'll make them happy. They'll point and they'll say, see how stupid he was to follow God? Kind of sounds like on that cross. When they said he's the Son of God. If he's the Son of God, let him come down now, then we'll believe him. Satan doesn't have any new lies, guys. He just tells the old ones so well. They still work. But, verse 5, I have trusted in your loving kindness. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. So, just having the conversation with God and going through it, what is the result? He moves from his complaints to something more of an actual appeal, petition. And then that takes him back to his confidence in God, like I said in the outline. So at the end, he is once again trusting in God's loving kindness. He's not tortured right now by why. He's not tortured right now by how long. Because he knows that however long it is, it will end. And how will it end? It will end. I don't know. What do we say? 84 days in the air to make the trip, and only 3 days are actually in the air. I wonder how many times Mr. Carl P. Rogers talked about it. Yeah, just don't have enough to do it. It's just unreasonable to even keep trying at this point. Well, by the time I'm done, I'll have a whole new plane. That's such a bad thing? Just talking to God reminds us that we do have that relationship with him of his beloved child. And that deep down we know he really does want what is best for us. But best for us by his definition, which is, of course, for us to be with him spiritually for eternally, rather than simply to enjoy a quote-unquote good life here on this piece of side for a very short period of time. And so as he appeals to God, he's reminded that who he is appealing to is indeed the Lord God, and that he does deal faithfully. See, sometimes you got to remember who the liar in the situation is. I don't know how many times through the years in counseling and in the workplace, I've had to help tell people that came to me and they said, I'm not sure who has the right of it in this situation, because this one says this and this one says that. And I'll ask them, well, which one of them is known to you as a truthful person? And which one of them is known to you as not such a truthful person? Remember who the liar in the situation is. And as he talks to God there, he remembers that, oh yeah, it's not God that's the liar. It's Satan. And so he's able to move all the way from his complaint to praise, to singing. Something that would be turned into a song. I hope the lesson this morning has been helpful to you. I pray that this study will be fruitful to you to help each of us understand that there is a psalm, as has often been said, for every situation you'll find yourself in. There's one in there that fits, you know. And I hope that we'll grow spiritually by doing that, and that we'll be more joyful in our discipleship. But I have to remind you that all of these promises are for the children of God, for those who have obeyed that simple gospel and as a penitent believer have gone down into those waters of baptism and begun that life of discipleship that we talked about. I don't know where you're at spiritually this morning. You know, people always ask me, how many did you have in attendance? Sometimes I'll say, what do you mean physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually? Because, some of those numbers I can't tell. But I know that there is a God who will see you through to your destination. He will never leave me nor forsake me. That passage is quoted there in Hebrews 13:5. That is literally 3 words. Down, away, out. He will never leave you down and out. He won't do that. But you got to keep talking to him. If you need to respond to God's invitation in any way, please do it now as we stand and sing.